The final truth that changes you forever. Carl Jung's most haunting lesson. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Carl Jung. Welcome back to Spiritual Wisdom, where today we explore the haunting yet liberating truth that has the power to change your life forever. This isn't just another idea to think about. It's a lens that can transform the way you understand yourself, your relationships, and every challenge you face. As you listen, I invite you to reflect deeply. Do you believe that your inner world shapes everything you experience on the outside? Share your thoughts in the comments below, because your insight might inspire someone else on their journey. Let's dive into this revelation together and discover how applying it daily can lead to real growth, clarity, and lasting happiness. 1. Everything in your life is a reflection of yourself. Everything in your life is a reflection of yourself, and this singular truth becomes the foundation of every genuine step towards spirituality and spiritual awakening. When Jung said, "There is no real objectivity," he wasn't speaking in metaphor. He was describing the direct structure of your experience. You have never encountered reality as it actually is, not even once, because every situation, every relationship, and every struggle you face passes through the invisible lens of your inner world. This lens is shaped by your childhood wounds, your unconscious fears, your hidden longings, and the parts of yourself you have rejected or denied. In other words, the world you think you are dealing with is actually a projection of your psyche, and every moment of your life becomes a message from the deepest layers of your mind, asking you to look inward instead of outward. Jung called this lens the glass of your own psychology, and through this glass, everything becomes personal because everything is filtered. A painful memory that you never resolved becomes the reason you react so quickly in certain conversations. A forgotten insecurity becomes the source of jealousy, comparison, or defensiveness. Even the people who trigger you the most are mirrors showing the traits you don't want to admit you carry. And the people who inspire you are reflections of your own dormant greatness asking to be awakened. Nothing is random, and nothing is neutral. It is all a projection of you meeting yourself again and again until you finally recognize what is being shown. When you understand this more deeply, you begin to realize why certain patterns repeat in your life. The same types of relationships, the same disappointments, the same emotional reactions keep resurfacing, not because life is cruel, but because your unconscious mind is persistent. It keeps bringing you the same kinds of experiences so that you can finally see the truth behind them. Until you have healed a wound, it will continue to appear in different disguises. Until you confront a fear, it will continue to shape your decisions from the shadows. This is why Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." Because what you refuse to face inside eventually becomes the life you are forced to live outside. And when you begin to accept that every conflict is an inner conflict reflected outward, your entire world starts to shift. Suddenly, criticism from others becomes an invitation to see where you feel inadequate. Rejection becomes a mirror revealing where you have rejected yourself. Betrayal becomes a message showing you where you ignored your intuition or abandoned your boundaries. Even your biggest problems stop feeling like punishments and start looking like teachers because they are. The universe is not trying to hurt you. It is trying to wake you up. It is using your external experiences to guide you back to the places inside yourself that are asking for healing, integration, and truth. This is the heart of spiritual awakening, realizing that nothing outside you has the power you once believed it did. Your reality is not created by circumstances. It is created by the meaning your mind assigns to those circumstances. And once you understand that, you step into a level of spiritual responsibility and spiritual freedom that transforms everything. For the first time, you stop seeing life as something that happens to you, and you start seeing it as something that happens through you, shaped by the deepest parts of who you are and who you are becoming. If this truth resonates with you, declare it with certainty. Comment below, "I see myself clearly, and I choose to grow." 2. You live in a psychological simulation that you yourself created. You live in a psychological simulation that you yourself created. And once you truly understand this, you stop waiting for the world to treat you differently, because you finally see that life is not happening to you, but through you, shaped moment by moment by your beliefs, wounds, and hidden expectations. Everything you call reality is filtered through your inner world so completely that you often mistake your reactions for facts, forgetting that it is your mind that projects your life, not the outside world forcing itself upon you. This is why the people who annoy you are never coincidences. They are mirrors reflecting your rejected part, the traits or emotions you buried long ago, now returning through someone else so you can finally face them. And the people you constantly talk about in your head, those who replay again and again in your inner dialogue, are not just random thoughts. You are actually meeting your potential that does not exist yet, the version of you that wants to grow but has not been fully expressed, which is why your mind keeps bringing them forward, urging you to pay attention to the qualities they represent. When your life repeats the same emotional story, again in relationships, again in family patterns, again in career disappointments, understand that nothing is wrong with you. These cycles show up because repetitive story patterns are psychological lessons not seen directly, returning until you finally understand the truth they carry, no matter how frustrating they feel. These patterns are invitations rather than punishments, guiding you back to the areas of your psyche that need healing, integration, and spiritual understanding. The more you resist them, the louder they become. But the moment you recognize what they are actually teaching you, they release their hold on your life. Every trigger, every irritation, every obsession is a doorway into deeper self-awareness and a powerful step in your spiritual development. When you begin to see that your emotional reactions are reflections of your inner landscape rather than the world attacking you, you reclaim an extraordinary level of freedom. You stop feeling powerless and start noticing how your inner world quietly shapes everything you experience. Your relationships, your choices, your opportunities, and even the people you attract. The truth is simple, but life-changing. The world is always showing you yourself. And the more honestly you look at these reflections, the faster your spiritual growth accelerates. When someone provokes you, look inward and ask what part of yourself they are echoing. When a person stays in your mind, look for the unlived potential they represent. When a pattern repeats, look for the lesson it is trying to teach you. Because every moment, every reaction, every encounter is a message from your own consciousness, guiding you toward the person you are meant to become. 3. Your problem is not a problem. The real problem is the unconscious. Your problem is never the real problem. You are meeting the part of you that has been buried for years, and it is rising because it wants to be seen, understood, and transformed. This is why depression, anxiety, addiction, or the sting of failed love hits with such force, because what hurts is not the surface event, but the unconscious trying to become conscious. As Carl Jung once said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Once you stop fighting what your inner world is trying to reveal, everything in your life begins to shift. You keep choosing the same type of partner, falling into the same emotional traps, or repeating the same painful cycles, not because you are unlucky or broken, but because an unconscious pattern is playing itself out through you. Your psyche will repeat the same lesson in different disguises until you finally understand it. That is why a familiar heartbreak feels like déjà vu, why certain people trigger you instantly, why the same emotional storms return again and again. Your unconscious is knocking on the door, urging you to wake up. When you finally turn toward it instead of running from it, you begin to see that each problem is actually a message. Every fear is an unopened letter. Every emotional collapse is a mirror. Every ache is a guide leading you back to a forgotten part of yourself. Jung said, "What you resist not only persists, but grows stronger." The moment you stop resisting, the pattern begins to loosen, giving you space to breathe, reflect, and choose differently. When you feel panic rising, loneliness tightening your chest, or the old addiction whispering again, pause and say, "This is not the enemy. This is the messenger." Then ask yourself where you have felt this before and what this feeling is trying to tell you. The moment you ask honest questions, you step out of autopilot and into awareness. And awareness is the first doorway from shadow into light. You may realize that the partner who won't choose you mirrors a childhood wound of being overlooked, or the boss who never approves echoes the inner critic you learned to obey long ago. Once you see the pattern clearly, you are no longer trapped inside it. Instead, you gain the freedom to respond differently, to set boundaries, to choose peace over chaos, to walk away from what hurts, or to receive the love you once pushed away because you felt unworthy. This is why Jung reminded us that one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. Healing is not about pretending you are fine. It is about telling the truth about what has been living inside you. When you do that with compassion instead of shame, you interrupt the cycle that has followed you for years. You can start simply by noticing what repeats, naming the need beneath it: safety, love, validation, rest, and giving yourself what you have always begged others to give you. Take one small kind action each time the old feeling returns, whether it is breathing deeply instead of spiraling, speaking honestly instead of shrinking, or choosing calm connection instead of chasing intensity. As you do this consistently, you begin to rewire your emotional patterns from the inside out. Growth is not linear. It is a spiral that brings you back to the same lesson at a higher level of awareness each time. That is not failure, that is integration, the quiet miracle of becoming whole. When doubt whispers that you are not ready, remember Jung's words. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. This path is not about becoming someone new, but returning to the self you abandoned to survive, offering it the love, steadiness, and presence it never received. With every moment of honesty, every breath of awareness, and every small act of courage, the pattern dissolves. You step into a life where you respond instead of react, where you love without losing yourself, and where you finally understand that the problem was never a punishment, it was the doorway to your freedom. If you're ready to face the truth within and rise above the unconscious patterns shaping your life, declare it now. Comment below. I choose awareness, to show your commitment to your inner transformation. 4. Every conflict you have ever had is you punching the frame. Every conflict you have ever lived through becomes clearer the moment you understand that you have never truly been fighting other people. You have been punching the frame, striking at the invisible borders of your own psyche without realizing it. When Carl Jung said that the outer world is a projection of the inner world, he was pointing you toward a deeper level of spirituality where the world does not simply happen to you, it happens through you. This means that the arguments you replay in your mind, the disappointments that haunt you, and the people who trigger something sharp and familiar inside you are all reflections of a part of yourself that has stepped outside and is asking to be acknowledged. You are not at war with the world. You are wrestling with your own shadow, the unclaimed emotions and forgotten memories that shape your reactions long before you consciously choose them. And this recognition marks the beginning of true spiritual awakening. As you sit with this truth, you begin to realize how often your anger, fear, or defensiveness was not about the situation in front of you, but about something unresolved within you, something that felt too painful or too overwhelming to meet directly. So instead of facing it, your mind projected it outward, turning the world into a mirror that reflects what your inner self is trying to reveal. This is why the same patterns repeat, why different people can give you the same emotional wound, and why certain conflicts seem to follow you no matter how much you try to change your environment. The story is not happening outside of you. It is happening through you, shaped by the parts you have not yet allowed yourself to see. Jung understood that projection is not a flaw, but a message, a map pointing back to your inner landscape. And the moment you begin to recognize this, you stop blaming life and start understanding it. When you finally withdraw projection, life does not magically reorganize itself. You do. The world stays the same, but you see its truth with clarity that feels like stepping from shadow into light. You no longer mistake your emotional reactions for reality. You begin to separate what is happening outside from what is happening inside. This does not mean forcing yourself to be calm or pretending everything is fine. Instead, it means noticing the feeling as it rises, recognizing its origin, and asking yourself, what part of me is appearing in this moment? You may discover an old fear disguised as irritation, an old insecurity dressed as jealousy, or an old wound expressing itself as anger. And with every moment of awareness, the projection loses its power, and the conflict dissolves, not because the situation changed, but because you did. This is the quiet, powerful shift that spiritual awakening brings, the realization that the world is not against you. The people around you are not your enemies, and your life is not a battlefield. You simply spent years fighting reflections you did not know belonged to you. When you stop punching the frame, you stop hurting yourself through others. You begin to reclaim your energy, your peace, and your ability to respond instead of react. And as this inner shift deepens, life starts to feel lighter, clearer, and more truthful. Not because the world has softened, but because you finally see it without the distortion of your own unhealed shadows. 5. The ultimate key, consciousness. The ultimate key Jung points to is consciousness. And when he says, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will run your life and you will call it fate, he is revealing the silent force shaping everything you experience. Consciousness is not about controlling your reactions or forcing yourself into a certain way of thinking. It is the ability to see the truth exactly as it is, without distortion, without denial, and without the protective illusions your mind has built over the years. When you look closely, you realize that life has never been acting randomly toward you. The situations that repeat, the patterns that hurt, the people who trigger you, they are reflections of the hidden parts of yourself that have not yet been brought into the light. As you begin to observe these patterns with honesty, you discover that spirituality is not an escape from reality, but the courage to face what has been moving you from beneath the surface. Every emotional reaction is a message. Every frustration is a mirror. And every painful moment is a doorway into deeper spiritual development. Jung understood that the true struggle is not between you and the world, but between you and the unconscious beliefs, fears, and memories shaping your behavior. The world outside is only echoing what lives inside. And when you realize this, you finally stop fighting life and start understanding it. Consciousness grows the moment you choose to notice what you once avoided. A trigger becomes a teacher instead of an enemy. A repeating cycle becomes a lesson instead of a curse. A difficult person becomes a reflection instead of an obstacle. When awareness shines on what was unconscious, its power dissolves instantly, just as darkness disappears when a light is turned on. This is why your deepest spiritual development begins the moment you decide to see yourself honestly, even if the truth is uncomfortable. And as this awareness expands, something profound begins to shift within you. The past no longer feels like a prison, but a map explaining how you became who you are. Your emotions become guides, showing you where healing is needed. Your relationships transform because you finally understand the inner wounds they were mirroring back to you. Life becomes less about survival and more about awakening, less about reacting, and more about recognizing the deeper patterns shaping your reality. In this way, consciousness becomes the heart of spirituality itself. It is the quiet turning inward, the gentle seeing of your own inner world, the willingness to stop running from yourself and finally understand the truth beneath your experiences. And the more conscious you become, the more life begins to open in ways that feel aligned, meaningful, and deeply freeing. Because you are no longer controlled by what you cannot see, you are guided by the clarity you choose to create. If this awakens something deep within you, take the next step. Subscribe to the channel for more spiritual wisdom that helps you expand your consciousness and transform your inner world. 6. All the knowledge you seek outside of yourself is already within you. All the knowledge you seek outside of yourself is already within you. And every time you look for answers in books, videos, or teachings, you are not absorbing something new. You are awakening something ancient that has been sleeping inside your own mind. Carl Jung said, "Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakes." And when you truly understand this, you begin to see that you never learn from the words themselves. You learn from the way your inner world reacts to them. When a sentence touches you, it is not because the sentence is powerful, but because it activates a truth you already carry. A truth that has been waiting for the right moment to surface. This is why two people can read the same line and walk away with completely different experiences. One feels transformed, while the other feels nothing. And the difference lies entirely in the inner landscape meeting the words, not the words themselves. Every insight that feels meaningful to you becomes meaningful because it reflects something you already know, but have not yet fully seen. What you believe you learned from Jung is really your own spiritual wisdom being mirrored back to you through his language, and the calmness, clarity, or awakening you think he gives you is actually your own psyche recognizing itself. You project your fears onto stories, your hope onto teachings, your longing onto symbols, and then you call the result a lesson, as if the transformation came from outside when it was actually rising from within. Jung hinted at this when he said, "Your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart." Because learning is not an act of taking in information, but an act of remembering who you are beneath confusion, noise, and fear. Every so-called new understanding you gain is simply a forgotten part of your soul, stepping back into the light. This is why spiritual wisdom feels familiar. You do not discover it. You recognize it, the same way you recognize your reflection in a mirror you haven't looked at in years. And as you listen now, you are not just hearing these words, you are filtering them through your history, your pain, your desires, and your deepest questions. You are shaping the meaning of every sentence through the lens of your own psyche. And this process is what creates understanding. Nothing outside of you has the power to teach you what you refuse to see inside yourself. And nothing outside can awaken you until something within is ready to rise. So when a lesson lands so deeply that it feels like your entire world shifts in an instant, it is not because the lesson is extraordinary. It is because you have finally reached the level of awareness that can recognize it. Every moment of awakening is a moment of remembering. Every moment of clarity is a moment of returning. And every moment of transformation is a moment when the self meets the self and finally understands its own language. This is the haunting truth Carl Jung uncovered. You are both the seeker and the source, both the student and the wisdom, both the question and the answer. 7. You are not the ego, you are the observer. You are not the ego because the ego is simply the collection of thoughts, emotions, and identities that rise and fall inside you, while you remain the one who sees them all with quiet clarity. Carl Jung's most haunting lesson reminds you that you are not your problems, not your fears, not the racing stories inside your mind, because all of those are the observed, and you are the observer. the silent awareness that witnesses everything without being burned by any of it. Spirituality becomes real the moment you realize that your thoughts appear and disappear like clouds. Your emotions rise and fade like waves, and your memories shift like shadows across the day. Yet something in you stays unchanged, steady, and open. This is the hidden doorway of spiritual awakening. The recognition that the one who watches cannot be harmed by what it watches. And the moment you feel this separation, even for a second, the loops that control you begin to fall apart. Jung understood that people suffer most when they believe they are their inner storms. When anger rises, they say, "I am angry," and the identity fuses with the emotion until clarity disappears. But when you shift to, "Anger is arising, and I am noticing it," everything changes because you have just placed awareness above reaction. The observer creates space, and in that space, your choices reappear. Anxiety works the same way. Your mind predicts disasters, your chest tightens, your breath becomes shallow. But when you say, "Anxiety is here, and I am watching it," the spell breaks. Loops only survive when you feed them with identification. The moment awareness steps in, the loop begins to dissolve because it no longer has a self to cling to. This is what Jung meant when he said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." Because the unconscious is not just hidden memories. It is also all the emotional storms you mistake for you. To understand this observer more deeply, imagine yourself as the sky. Thoughts are clouds, emotions are weather, sensations are passing winds, but the sky itself is untouched by any of it. No matter how violent the storm becomes, the sky never breaks. Or imagine sitting beside a river, watching water drift by. Each thought is a leaf, each memory a branch, each emotion a wave. When you forget who you are, you jump into the river and get swept away. But when you remember the observer, you sit calmly on the bank, watching everything pass, choosing wisely when to step in and when to let go. This awareness is not cold or detached. It is the most compassionate part of you because it can hold every emotion without drowning in it. It can sit with grief without collapsing, sit with fear without running, sit with joy without clinging. The observer is your deepest form of love because it gives every part of you room to breathe. Once you begin living from this place, your inner world reorganizes itself. You stop negotiating with every painful thought. You stop believing every anxious prediction. You stop collapsing into every emotional wave. You begin to act instead of react, choose instead of repeat, respond instead of spiral. This is why the final truth Jung wanted you to understand is so liberating. You are not the one spinning inside the modular loops of the mind. You are the awareness in which those loops appear. And every time you return to the observer, you break another layer of unconscious patterning, making room for clarity, strength, and transformation to rise naturally, the way light fills a room when you open the curtains. Through this recognition, spirituality becomes lived experience, and spiritual awakening becomes the natural expression of who you already are beneath every storm. If you're still with me, and this insight about the observer is speaking to you, comment, "I am the observer," below. Your voice helps us grow this spiritual community. 8. Enlightenment is not about changing yourself. It is about realizing your true nature. Enlightenment is not about becoming someone different, but about realizing your true nature. Because in spirituality and spiritual development, the real shift happens the moment you stop trying to transform yourself into an ideal and begin to see the truth of who you have always been. You were never meant to build a new identity from scratch, only to recognize the deeper self that has been quietly guiding you beneath all your fears, habits, and defenses. When you understand this, you see why Jung said your life is the journey of unconsciousness into consciousness. Everything you struggle with is not a punishment, but an invitation to wake up to the patterns operating in the dark. The anger that erupts too quickly, the insecurity that whispers you're not enough, the urge to please others even when it hurts you. All of it is your psyche trying to show you where you have forgotten yourself. And the moment you bring awareness to these patterns, their power dissolves because nothing can control you once you fully see it. This shift does not require force or perfection, only honesty. When you admit you are tired, you rest. When you admit you're avoiding the truth, you face it. When you admit you're scared, you choose courage instead of pretending. Each act of honest awareness becomes a step back into your center, the place inside you that has always been steady, present, and whole. As you move deeper into this awareness, life becomes less about fixing and more about seeing. You start to notice how your reactions are shaped by old wounds, how you sometimes interpret neutrality as danger or love as a test, and how much simpler everything becomes when you pause and question the stories running in your mind. You begin to respond rather than repeat, because you understand that what remains unconscious becomes fate, and what becomes conscious becomes freedom. Even your relationships start to shift. You stop trying to control outcomes and instead speak your truth with compassion. You listen more deeply, not just to what someone says, but to what your body feels when you hear them. You express your needs without blame, and you allow others to be themselves without trying to reshape their behavior to soothe your own fears. This is how presence replaces performance, how authenticity dissolves insecurity, and how you slowly return to the person you were before the world told you who to be. Over time, you realize that awareness is not passive, it is power. It gives you the clarity to take aligned action, small but consistent steps that match the person you want to be. You tell the truth sooner. You breathe before reacting. You choose one simple act that honors your values each day. You let discipline flow from devotion instead of fear. And when you inevitably stumble, you do not collapse into shame, because you finally understand that growth is not a straight line, but a continuous returning, a steady remembering of the self beneath the noise. This is the heart of spiritual development, living from the truth instead of the stories, choosing consciousness instead of old patterns, and allowing your inner light to shape your outer world. 9. Living this truth, moving from living in reaction to living in awareness. Living this truth means shifting from a life built on reaction to a life lived in awareness, where you finally understand that your inner world is the source of every experience you face. Carl Jung called this the movement from unconscious living to conscious participation in your own life. And when you begin to embody this spiritual wisdom, you realize that every moment life challenges you is actually life revealing you. So when someone triggers you, instead of immediately defending yourself or blaming them, pause long enough to ask, what part of me is being projected right now? Because every reaction you have toward another person is a reflection of something hidden within yourself, asking to be seen. And when the same problem shows up again and again, not as a coincidence, but as a pattern that keeps looping, shift your question from why does this keep happening to me to what unconscious pattern is trying to become conscious through this situation. And that single shift in awareness changes your entire inner landscape. When something hurts, instead of turning away from the pain or seeing it as an enemy designed to break you, try to recognize it as a message sent from a deeper part of your psyche, a signal showing you a place within yourself that has been ignored, denied, or misunderstood. Jung taught that there is no coming to consciousness without pain. And when you truly understand this, you stop running from your emotional wounds and begin listening to them as teachers. Pain becomes a doorway rather than a punishment, an invitation to understand yourself on a level you once avoided. And through that awareness, you begin to see every emotional experience, pleasant or painful, as part of a larger inner conversation with your own soul. This is not the mystical version of the law of attraction, not the oversimplified idea that you magically create everything by thinking positively or negatively. This is a grounded, observable psychological truth. Your psyche organizes your experience of reality. You are the projector, casting the image, the screen receiving the image, and the film being played all at the same time. Every person you meet reflects a part of you. Every conflict reveals a pattern within you. Every emotional wound exposes a layer of your unconscious. And once you begin to see this clearly, not as a theory, but as a living truth, you stop fighting the world outside and begin decoding the world inside. From here, awareness becomes your greatest power. You watch your triggers instead of drowning in them. You notice your patterns instead of repeating them blindly. You approach your pain with curiosity instead of fear. And slowly, you awaken to the fact that nothing in your life is random, nothing is meaningless, and nothing is truly against you. Everything is guiding you back to yourself, urging you toward a higher level of clarity, responsibility, and inner freedom. And in that shift from reaction to awareness, you finally begin to live the life your unconscious has been trying to lead you toward all along. In the end, Carl Jung's most haunting lesson reminds us that life is not happening to us, but through us. Every emotion, every challenge, every relationship is a mirror reflecting the unseen depths of our own psyche. When you finally understand this truth, you stop fighting the world and start transforming from within. If this message resonated with you on your journey of awakening, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs it, and subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss our upcoming insights into your inner world and spiritual growth. Carl Jung's mind trick: how to trick your brain into liking discipline. Discipline is the bridge between goals and accomplishment. Jim Rohn. What if the secret to loving discipline isn't about forcing yourself to do what you dislike, but about reprogramming your mind to see structure as freedom? In this episode of Spiritual Wisdom, inspired by Carl Jung's profound insights, we'll explore how to train your brain to genuinely enjoy the process of discipline, transforming consistency into an act of self-love rather than self-punishment. Think about it. How would your life change if you stopped fighting discipline and started flowing with it? Comment below your thoughts on what discipline means to you, and let's grow together in awareness, purpose, and mastery. 1. Discipline isn't natural, it's biological resistance. The human brain was never designed for modern discipline. It was designed for survival. Every impulse that pulls you toward comfort, every moment you choose ease over effort, is not a moral failure, but an echo of your biology. Our ancestors didn't need to plan for 10-year goals or maintain focus for long hours. They needed to conserve energy, avoid danger, and seize whatever immediate reward ensured their survival. This ancient wiring still governs us today, silently pushing us to seek rest, comfort, and pleasure in a world that now demands endurance, patience, and consistency. Carl Jung's spiritual wisdom reveals that what we call lack of discipline is not weakness. It's the conflict between a primitive brain and an awakened consciousness learning to evolve beyond it. To trick your brain into liking discipline, you must first understand that resistance is biological, not personal. Your brain is wired to save energy because for thousands of years, expending too much of it meant death. But in the age of spiritual awakening, growth no longer depends on avoiding danger. It depends on consciously reprogramming that same instinct. Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." When you bring awareness to your resistance, you stop fighting yourself and start transforming it. You begin to see that the urge to procrastinate or escape isn't laziness. It's a misdirected survival mechanism trying to protect you from imagined exhaustion. Understanding this turns struggle into strategy, and every act of discipline becomes an act of spiritual transcendence. The more you observe your impulses with awareness, the more power you have over them. Spirituality teaches that awakening begins when you stop identifying with your thoughts and start witnessing them. When you notice your mind craving comfort, pause and observe. Don't condemn it. Don't obey it. Just breathe and watch. In that space of awareness, a shift happens. You're no longer the victim of your biology, but the master of it. Each time you choose focus over distraction, you're not just exercising willpower, you're rewiring the brain itself. Neurons that once fired for instant gratification begin to associate pleasure with progress, effort, and purpose. Slowly, discipline stops feeling like deprivation and starts feeling like empowerment. In this process, discipline becomes a form of spiritual training. It's not about punishing yourself or denying pleasure. It's about expanding your capacity for conscious choice. The moment you act despite resistance, you awaken new circuits of courage and clarity within you. Every disciplined act tells your nervous system, "I am safe in growth." Over time, your biology adapts. What once felt like struggle begins to feel like flow. You start finding joy in the rhythm of order, peace in repetition, and strength in consistency. Your spiritual awakening deepens because you're no longer controlled by primal impulses. You're guided by higher intention. Discipline, then, is not the enemy of freedom. It is the path to it. True freedom is not doing whatever you feel like. It's having the power to act in alignment with your purpose, even when your emotions or biology resist. The energy you once spent avoiding effort becomes the same energy that fuels your transformation. When you understand this dance between body and consciousness, you realize that discipline is not about forcing yourself. It's about befriending your nature and teaching it a new way to serve you. Every time you show up with awareness, you are not suppressing your instincts, but upgrading them, merging ancient biology with awakened spirituality. This is the art of inner mastery, the evolution from unconscious survival to conscious creation, where discipline becomes devotion and effort becomes enlightenment. Have you ever tried to train your brain to actually enjoy discipline? If so, share your experience in the comments below so others can learn from your journey. If not, comment, "I will try," and let's begin rewiring our minds together toward growth and mastery. 2. Real discipline comes from design, not willpower. Real discipline isn't born from willpower or bursts of motivation. It's born from design. When you try to force yourself into disciplined behavior, you're fighting your own biology. The human brain is wired to seek comfort, predictability, and reward, not resistance. That's why sheer determination always fades. Motivation, no matter how inspiring in the moment, is temporary because it relies on emotional energy, and emotions fluctuate. As James Clear wrote in Atomic Habits, motivation is overrated. Environment is more important. What this means is that lasting discipline has very little to do with how strong you feel in a given moment, and everything to do with how your surroundings and systems are structured to support the person you want to become. You don't succeed because you wake up feeling inspired every day. You succeed because you've created an environment where success happens naturally. If your space constantly tempts you with distractions, your biology will always win. But if you consciously design your life so that the easiest option is the right one, your brain will adapt. Spirituality teaches the same principle. Transformation doesn't come from suppression, but alignment. When your inner world and outer environment are in harmony, discipline stops being a punishment and becomes a flow. This is how spiritual development truly happens, not through force, but through design that makes the higher path feel natural. Carl Jung often spoke of the unconscious shaping our choices without us realizing it. Discipline, in this sense, is the conscious mind working in cooperation with the unconscious, arranging your environment and daily rhythm so that your deeper values are constantly supported. When your space mirrors your soul's intentions, you no longer have to push yourself. You're pulled forward by design. If you want to wake up early, put your alarm across the room. If you want to read more, place a book where your phone usually is. These small but intentional shifts turn effort into ease because you are no longer battling impulse, you're directing it. This is the true essence of discipline, the quiet structure that sustains spiritual growth. The spiritual journey isn't about resisting your human nature, but understanding it so deeply that you can shape it toward higher purpose. When you work with your biology instead of against it, you discover that self-mastery isn't about force, it's about wisdom. By creating systems that align with your soul, you begin to live with greater peace, consistency, and flow. Over time, what once felt difficult becomes effortless, and what once required motivation becomes automatic. This is how spirituality and psychology merge. The design of your environment becomes the design of your destiny, and discipline becomes not a struggle, but a natural expression of who you are becoming. Do you agree that true discipline is built by design? not by force. Comment below with conviction. I design my life with purpose and discipline. 3. Environment shapes behavior. Choice architecture. Your brain doesn't actually crave discipline. It craves ease. It moves toward what's visible, simple, and within reach. That's why you tend to pick your phone up instead of your book, or open social media instead of your journal. Carl Jung's spiritual wisdom reminds us that much of what drives human behavior happens below the surface, within the unconscious mind. So if you truly want to master discipline, don't fight your biology, work with it. Instead of forcing yourself to act against your impulses, reshape the world around you so that your impulses lead you toward the life you want. This is called choice architecture, the art of designing your environment to make good decisions effortless. When you make the right choice, the easiest choice, you turn discipline from a battle into a flow. For example, if you want to drink more water, simply keep a bottle on your desk and in your bag. If you want to meditate, place your cushion where you see it first thing in the morning. You're not becoming stronger, you're becoming smarter. The energy you once used to resist temptation now becomes fuel for consistency. As Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Every environment you live in is a mirror of your unconscious mind. A messy room reflects scattered energy. A clean, peaceful space supports clarity and purpose. When your outer world aligns with your inner values, discipline stops feeling like pressure and starts feeling like harmony. In truth, discipline is not about self-punishment. It's about self-respect. It's not about pushing harder. It's about preparing better. The most successful people aren't always the most motivated. They're the most prepared. They remove friction between intention and action. They don't rely on willpower. They rely on design. When your surroundings invite focus, when your tools are ready, and your environment whispers reminders of who you're becoming, you no longer need to force yourself to act. You simply flow into alignment. This is what Carl Jung's teachings point to. Awareness transforms resistance into rhythm. Your surroundings are constantly programming your mind, whether you realize it or not. The arrangement of objects, the lighting in your room, even the background noise, all of it shapes how your brain feels and what it chooses next. When you take control of this architecture, you take control of your destiny. You're no longer reacting, you're creating. Spiritual wisdom teaches that energy flows where attention goes. So place what matters most where your attention naturally goes. Your goals, your affirmations, your reminders of purpose. When you create an environment that silently echoes your highest self, discipline becomes an effortless expression of your true nature. Discipline is not a test of strength. It's an act of understanding. It's realizing that preparation is the most spiritual form of self-love because it removes unnecessary struggle. By mastering the architecture of your choices, you transform your daily routine into a sacred ritual of alignment between your mind, body, and soul. That's not just productivity, that's enlightenment in action. Don't forget to subscribe for more spiritual wisdom on how to design your environment to shape your destiny. Because true discipline begins with the space you create around you. 4. Habit stacking. Hacking the brain's autopilot. Your brain doesn't resist discipline because you're lazy. It resists because it's wired for survival. For millions of years, The human mind evolved to save energy, avoid pain, and seek quick rewards. It runs on habit loops: cue, routine, and reward. Once a loop is formed, the brain conserves energy by automating it. This is where habit stacking becomes your secret weapon. Instead of forcing new behaviors into your life, you attach them to ones that already exist. You're not fighting your brain, you're reprogramming it gently. After brushing your teeth, meditate for 2 minutes. After turning off your laptop, write one line in a gratitude journal. After pouring your morning coffee, take 3 deep breaths. Each small act piggybacks on something familiar, bypassing resistance and making the new habit automatic through neural association. In spirituality and spiritual awakening, this process mirrors how consciousness expands. You don't leap into enlightenment overnight. You grow through consistent awareness anchored in daily rituals. Just as one candle lights another, each tiny practice kindles a deeper connection to presence. Carl Jung believed transformation occurs not by force, but by integration, by allowing the unconscious to cooperate with the conscious mind. Habit stacking is a practical way of doing this. You invite your unconscious autopilot to serve your higher self instead of sabotaging it. Your cue becomes sacred, your routine becomes intentional, and your reward becomes spiritual, a sense of harmony and control within your day. To make it work, start small. Write your stack as a promise. After I, existing habit, I will, new action. The simpler the new behavior, the faster your brain accepts it. Let it take less than a minute, just long enough for your nervous system to register success. After you close your phone at night, repeat a short affirmation like, "I am at peace." After you lock your door, whisper gratitude for the day. Every repetition strengthens the neural bridge between the old habit and the new, engraving discipline into your identity. What once felt like effort begins to feel natural. This is how the mind learns to love discipline, not through punishment or pressure, but through association, ease, and reward. Over time, these small rituals form a rhythm, a spiritual dance between awareness and behavior. You begin to see your day as a chain of conscious moments instead of chaotic reactions. Each habit becomes a doorway to mindfulness, a signal to wake up within your own life. As Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." Habit stacking is precisely that, making your unconscious routines serve your conscious goals. Through this alignment, discipline transforms from something heavy into something holy. It's no longer about control, it's about flow. In this way, the path of discipline and the path of spirituality merge, guiding you gently towards spiritual awakening, one intentional loop at a time. 5. Procrastination is poor design, not laziness. Procrastination isn't proof of laziness, it's proof of poor design. The brain isn't wired for self-sabotage, it's wired for survival. It naturally avoids what feels uncertain, effortful, or unrewarding, because deep down, it's trying to protect your energy. When a task feels heavy, unclear, or disconnected from any sense of reward, your brain simply says, "Not now." That's why forcing discipline rarely works. What truly works is redesigning the system. When your environment and habits align with how your brain functions, action stops being a battle and becomes a natural flow. This is where the 4 laws of behavior change step in. Make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, and make it satisfying. To make it obvious, build visible cues that trigger immediate action. Leave your journal open on the desk. Set out your workout clothes the night before. Place your book on your pillow so it greets you before sleep. The key is to remove uncertainty. You're not relying on memory or willpower anymore. You're using design to guide behavior. Then, make it attractive by pairing your new habit with something pleasurable or deeply meaningful. Brew your favorite coffee when you start working. Listen to calming music while studying. Or remind yourself that this small act contributes to your greater purpose. When a task connects with your values like peace, health, creativity, or service, it becomes more than a duty. It becomes an act of alignment with your higher self and your spiritual development. Next, make it easy. Shrink the starting point until it feels almost effortless. Commit to reading one page, writing one paragraph, or stretching for 2 minutes. Remove friction. Keep tools ready. Minimize distractions, and prepare your environment for success. The easier the start, the faster momentum builds. You don't need to conquer the mountain. You only need to take the first step with clarity and calm intention. And finally, make it satisfying. The brain repeats what feels rewarding. So track your progress, celebrate small wins, and acknowledge yourself at the end of each effort. Each done moment strengthens your self-trust and teaches your mind that progress feels good. When you apply these laws through the lens of spirituality, discipline transforms from struggle into sacred practice. Each intentional act, whether reading, working, or exercising, becomes a form of devotion to your growth. Instead of forcing yourself, you flow with purpose. The process itself becomes meditative. Cue, act, reward, repeat. In this flow, discipline stops feeling like control and starts feeling like freedom. You realize that procrastination was never a moral failure. It was a misalignment between your design and your goals. Once you align them, the system carries you forward effortlessly, and what once felt like resistance becomes the quiet joy of consistency and spiritual development. Leave your like and subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss insights like this that help you design your life with purpose and discipline. Type in the comments, "I choose design over distraction." 6. You don't need to like discipline. Just make it inevitable. You don't need to like discipline. You just need to make it inevitable. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." This truth reveals that discipline is not about force or emotion, but design and awareness. Most people fail to stay consistent not because they are weak, but because they rely on feelings instead of structure. Spiritual wisdom reminds us that our routines shape our destiny far more than our moods ever will. You don't need to enjoy every step of the process. You just need to make the right choices, so natural and frictionless that they unfold without resistance. Discipline isn't about forcing yourself to do what you dislike. It's about shaping your world so doing what's right becomes the easiest thing to do. Your brain was never designed for long-term heroics. It evolved for efficiency and survival. It seeks comfort, predictability, and energy conservation. That's why procrastination is not a moral flaw, but a biological response. When the path toward your goals feels heavy or confusing, your brain avoids it to save energy. The key, then, is to work with your mind, not against it. Reduce friction. Make positive actions simple and immediate. Create cues that guide your behavior automatically. Spiritual awakening teaches that when you align your external reality with your inner truth, effort dissolves into flow. The most spiritually wise people don't rely on motivation. They rely on alignment. If you want to build a meditation habit, place your cushion where you can't miss it and commit to 2 minutes, not 20. If you want to eat healthier, fill your kitchen with visible, ready-to-eat fruits and remove processed snacks from sight. If you want to write every morning, keep your journal open on your desk before bed. These are not acts of willpower. They are acts of design. You are not trying to overpower your brain, but to reprogram its environment so that the right action feels inevitable. Discipline becomes less about pushing and more about flowing. As Jung might suggest, you are integrating your shadow, the part of you that resists change, by giving it a structure that gently leads it forward. True discipline is spiritual architecture. It's not about emotional highs or bursts of inspiration. It's about crafting a system that carries you when motivation fades. When you design your surroundings, habits, and schedule to support your higher self, you transform your life from chaos into harmony. This is the essence of spiritual wisdom: cooperation with your own nature instead of war against it. You learn that discipline is not suppression, but self-respect, a daily ritual of choosing alignment over impulse. Over time, your new habits stop feeling like effort and start feeling like identity. That's the quiet mastery Carl Jung pointed toward, making the unconscious conscious so that your structure, not your mood, creates your destiny. 7. Identity is the root of true discipline. Long-term transformation does not begin with behavior. It begins with identity. When you see yourself as the kind of person who follows through, discipline stops being something you force and starts being something you naturally express. Carl Jung once said, "You are what you do, not what you say you'll do." And that truth echoes through every habit you build. If you tell yourself, "I am the kind of person who does what needs to be done," you're not just repeating a phrase, you're sculpting your subconscious. Your brain begins to align with this self-image, quietly filtering your thoughts, emotions, and actions through it until following through feels like your nature, not your burden. Identity shapes habits, and habits reinforce identity. It is a self-reinforcing loop that builds spiritual strength through repetition and consistency. When you operate from the identity level, discipline feels less like resistance and more like embodiment. You are not pushing yourself toward a future version of you. You are simply acting in alignment with who you already believe yourself to be. Spirituality teaches us that awakening is not about adding more, but remembering who you truly are. Discipline, in that same light, is remembering your integrity in every small choice. Every time you honor that choice, your identity grows stronger, and your habits follow like a shadow. You are no longer trapped in the cycle of guilt and motivation, because you've replaced the endless question of "how do I stay disciplined?" with the certainty of "this is just who I am." But identity alone is not enough. It must align with your environment and systems. If your environment contradicts who you're becoming, it will pull you back into old versions of yourself. The disciplined person doesn't rely on willpower to resist temptation. They design their surroundings to support their highest self. They keep their phone away while working, lay out their workout clothes the night before, and create spaces that make the right choice the easiest one. When your environment whispers the same message as your inner identity, your brain no longer wastes energy fighting itself. Discipline becomes frictionless, flowing from the alignment between your beliefs, your surroundings, and your routines. Systems act as the invisible architecture that sustains this identity. Rituals, checklists, and structures are not cages. They are sacred containers that preserve your energy. When you have a system, you no longer depend on emotion to act. You depend on rhythm. This is the secret of all lasting change, to let rhythm replace resistance. Over time, these rhythms deepen into habits. Habits crystallize into identity, and identity becomes destiny. In this state, discipline is not an act of self-denial, but a daily expression of self-trust. You do what needs to be done because it feels right, natural, and aligned with your truth. In the process of spiritual awakening, this understanding transforms everything. You realize that discipline is not punishment, it is devotion. It is the act of honoring the divine potential within you by acting in accordance with it. When your environment, systems, and identity form a single flow, you move through life with quiet strength. You don't have to force yourself to be disciplined. You simply live as someone who already is. And in that alignment between inner belief and outer action lies the truest form of freedom, the discipline that feels like peace. To affirm your new identity rooted in discipline, comment below, "I am becoming who I'm meant to be." Let this be your declaration of transformation. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications to continue growing with us on spiritual wisdom. Discipline isn't punishment. It's freedom disguised as effort. As Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." When you learn to train your mind to enjoy the process, you stop fighting yourself and start aligning with your purpose. Remember, mastery begins with small, consistent steps that your higher self already knows you're capable of. If this message inspired you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our upcoming videos on transforming the mind and awakening the soul.